My name is Justin Lemoine. I'm the Executive Director of the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area. I'm a landscape architect by degree, and here in the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area, we're in a division of the Office of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism for the state. So a National Heritage Area, what most people don't know is a part of the National Park Service, but National Heritage Areas are not actually parks. It was envisioned in the 80s by Ronald Reagan as America's new version of national parks. And essentially it's an overlay that recognizes an area that is significant to the overall makeup of the nation because of their cultural, their natural, their historical, and their recreational resources. The Heritage Areas program is essentially meant to provide a framework with funding through the Park Service to enhance cultural resources and preserve cultural resources. For South Central Louisiana, for the Atchafalaya region, it's about how we live with and how we live in spite of water, and it's all about our unique language, cultural identity with the French language here in South Louisiana. And so a lot of what we do is sort of tell the story about how water shaped Louisiana and how it made the language a stronger language and how it made the people, through a mix of different backgrounds, very, very strong and resilient and different than any other place in the country. I realized I was a preservationist when I was about 12. I grew up in a house that my great-grandfather built in the 20s, and my parents decided they wanted to build a new house instead of saving the house that we were in, and it really upset me, and I didn't understand why we wouldn't just keep this great, amazing old house we lived in. Luckily, my parents sold the house to be moved, and it was preserved somewhere else, just not on our property. My degree is in landscape architecture from LSU. I practiced in private practice for 13 years before I took the job here with the state. And what really got me into the role with the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area was the ability to use the practice of design along with preservation and with environmental resources and education all combined to kind of tell a story about the uniqueness of South Central Louisiana. As a landscape architect, a lot of what we do is design based, and it's based in research on what the history of a site is and what the history of an area is. And so a lot of design is informed on the notions and the history of the past. And that's always kind of stuck with me, is doing the research and understanding what has transpired over time to make a place what it is today. That includes, the history of the environment, but also the history of the structures that remain on those sites. And that was one of the things that drew me to this position here at Atchafalaya, is the ability to influence preservation of those areas through technical resources, through actual funding, through our grants program, and then also just the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the preservation that other groups are doing throughout the state. Average day or week is pretty hard to pin down. We're all over the place. The Atchafalaya Heritage Area is 14 parishes from Concordia all the way down to Terrebonne, so it's basically from the Red River all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Monday of next week we're actually going to be kayaking in the Atchafalaya Basin, and later on in the week we'll be up in Marksville and Spring Bayou Wildlife Management Area and meeting with the Tunica Biloxi tribe in Marksville. So it's a little bit of everything. Sometimes it's grant writing, sometimes it's federal grant reporting. Other days it's preparing letters for reauthorization for Congress. It's a very wide variety, especially meeting with partners and stakeholders in the region to understand the needs of the communities, especially the rural and small communities in Louisiana. Challenges in this position has really just been establishing contacts, especially with the small and rural communities that lack the technical resources and the technical staff that can provide them with connections to the outside, so that we can help to preserve some of those things that are often lost in those small communities. Challenges in the career in general is just helping people to understand in an emotional way why preserving a lot of our history and our historical sites is important. most rewarding part of my job is actually seeing connections from one person to the next that have resulted in positive movement in communities. Working with the city of Eunice and the folks with the association with Liberty Theater, and seeing all the progress they're making in restoring this historic structure and putting it back into commerce, and us actually being able to be a part of helping that to happen. Those, seeing actual progress in restoration is amazing. There are so many niches to preservation and to heritage resources. I think my advice would be to find that avenue, that piece that you're just absolutely so passionate about, the thing that's going to make you wake up each and every day and say, I want to get up and go and do this. If it's preserving public spaces, if it's preserving a specific style of building, find it, learn everything you can about it, and arm yourself with the information so that you're the best advocate you can be for preservation. Preservation success, I think, is the Lemoine building in historic Donaldsonville. We looked at, friends and I looked at purchasing a building across the street from there about 8 years ago and decided not to. And I looked at that building and thought, that thing's just going to rot and it's just going to fall apart here. And seeing that someone's purchased it with the intent to renovate it and bring it back to life is, I think, just a huge win, especially for a town like Donaldsonville that's kind of off the beaten path and doesn't see all of the, large crowds that cities like Baton Rouge or Lafayette typically see. A preservation loss that predates my time in Baton Rouge and my time on Earth maybe is the Paramount Theater in downtown Baton Rouge. It was demolished in, I believe, the 70s in favor of putting in a parking lot, and it was probably one of the most beautiful structures. And traveling to cities like Rayne and New Orleans and even Lafayette and seeing some of their historic theaters and what they've been able to do with them, and think about the fact that we lost this tremendous jewel, this asset in the middle of our downtown. It still does haunt me a little bit. It's at least a little heartening to see some of the remnants of it in the Downtown Development District's offices that were saved from the wrecking ball. We sort of straddle a line between preservation and tourism in Atchafalaya, but it's actually a lot more than that because it's cultural resource preservation. It's not just physical structure preservation. So it's preservation of cultures and languages and identities and people. The work that Louisiana Folklife is doing is tremendously helpful in providing a lot of continuity of cultural resources from day to day. And so their website is pretty helpful. The National Park Service has just an absolutely monumental amount of information on their website. And the people that work at the Park Service have even more information about sites and about the regions and the areas they represent.